to University Life, the ultimate student survival guide. My name's Lewis, how are you doing? So there's a couple of things that I didn't mention in the last video, so I'm going to mention it now before we start this video. Some of you will be aware that I am now wearing my blue glasses, and yeah, I feel like I'm starting to be known for my red glasses now, so like even some customers that I usually serve, they're like, whoa, you changed your glasses. So I don't really drink often, and then my brother decided to invite me over to Manchester because that's where he lives. And yeah, we thought, why not? Let's just go have a bit of fun because, like I said, I haven't gone out in ages, and yeah, it showed. I didn't handle my drink like a champ. It kind of hit me on the walk home. So after a very embarrassing Snapchat story and a lot of groveling to a very pissed off girlfriend, long story short, I broke my glasses on that night out. So yeah, flashback to my previous video. That's how I feel about that. Second thing, which is much more positive, I didn't actually mention this, but I got a pretty awesome support after the depression video. Like I said, I didn't really know how it was going to go down, but you know, I had all sorts of people reach out to me. You know, I had friends that just wanted to say, you know, I thought it was a really good video, and I thought it was really brave what you were doing. I had people, you know, sharing the video that I've never really spoken to before, so obviously it must have affected them in some way. You know, I had friends that I haven't spoken to in years just reach out and be like, hey, I really appreciated that. I even had some people, you know, sort of confide in me, which is really good to see. It's good to see people talking about mental health as an issue because it does have a bit of a stigma attached to it, so, you know, the fact that that video helped out some people in some sort of way is really good news. So on to this video. It is coming a bit later because I actually had a Valentine's video planned, but never came to fruition, so yeah, sorry about that. But I have a very good video today for your viewing pleasure. So as you guys know, I'm going through the whole UCAS application, waiting around, that sort of thing, and I'm starting to go back into that position that I was in before, where I feel like I'm just in a period where I'm just waiting, not really doing anything with my life, lack of purpose, and it's bringing me down a bit. But then I decided to pick a book off my shelf. I've had this book for a while, but I've never read it, and I don't know why. I did a post about it on Instagram. I thought it was a great book, so if you want to see that post, link down below. Basically, this book is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Mr. Stephen Covey, and it helped me out a lot in my situation, made me realize a lot of things. So basically, this video is sort of taking that book into account, the experiences I'm going through, and just giving you guys some practical tips on how you can turn a bad day into a good day. So let's get into it. One thing that struck out to me in this book, it spoke about the story of a man called Viktor Frankl. Now this man was a Jew, and he was involved in the Holocaust, which as we know is a terrible thing, still heavily regarded as one of the cruelest acts in mankind, still in all the history books. There's a lot of fascination around it. And so this man, he was right in the midst of it. He went through a lot of things which, you know, no person would dream of ever wishing upon someone else. So he lost everything bar his one sister. And on top of this, he was going through, you know, daily torture, many indignities, and it's just like one of the worst times you could possibly imagine for any human being. And so the story goes on to one day he's just alone and naked in a room reflecting on his life, and he realizes one of the most powerful things he could ever realize. And so this powerful thing which he realized, he almost had an epiphany, was that no matter what they did to him, he ultimately had the power to decide how he would react to that situation. And so the Nazis, they would have the liberty to choose the environment that he lived in. They could choose all these options. The one thing that they could never do was actually change how he responded to that stimulus. So once he realized this and developed that mental discipline, and so his freedom grew and grew until the point where he actually had more freedom than his Nazi captors. And so with that, he started sharing his story to his other captives, and he became a very inspirational figure. He even led on to inspire some of the Nazi guards, just with his mental bravery and his sense of self-worth. And the most important principle that could be taken away from this that he learned was that between stimulus and response, man has the freedom to choose. That principle is so good, I'm going to say it again. So between stimulus and response, man has the ability to choose. And so with this in mind, everyone can fall into then two categories. You can either be a person who is reactive or you can be a person who is proactive. Now, obviously the example of Viktor Frankl is a very extreme example, and often if you speak to people, if you've ever known someone who's gone through a terminal illness, it's often like how they can still manage to be positive and want to make a powerful impact on the world, that these people are the people that you often remember the most and you find them the most influential. So I'm also going to give you an example which is much more relatable, but before I do that, I want to give you a little concept to think about that will make the story make a lot more sense. So the book goes on to talk about two sort of circles, if you will. One circle relates to your circle of influence and the other is a circle of concern. So the circle of concern, like it says, it basically built up of any sort of concern that you have. So that could be regarding to health, it could be, you know, maybe war or climate change, you know, things that you feel should be changed in some sort of way, or at least that you should do something about. And then you can break down a smaller circle known as your circle of influence, and these are the things that it's also part of your circle of concern, but it's things that you can directly do something about. And so the difference between a proactive person and a reactive person: the proactive person will have a lot of positive energy, they will focus on the things that are within their control, and as they start to do this, the circle of influence will increase, it will grow. People who take a proactive approach will actually inspire others to change themselves and also behave in the same way. Reactive people, on the other hand, these are the people that will focus on the things which they don't have the control over. They'll focus on the environment, on people's weaknesses, and all this does is result in blaming people and feeling victimized, and essentially their circle of influence will shrink because the external factors around them are starting to control their lives and dictate how they live. Now, as you can imagine, I'm sure you will agree that it's much better to put your energy into things that you can control, and that way you can grow out your circle of influence, you can make an impact on the world, you can inspire others to do the same. And so with that in mind, I'm going to talk to you about the second story, which is more relatable, of a bunch of work colleagues who aren't too happy with their boss. So the president of this company, he was a very dynamic person, he had immense ability, a lot of talent, he knew exactly what he was doing, but one of the weaknesses is that he had a dictatorial kind of management style. So when it came down to doing things, he would just tell people, oh, do this, do that, go for that, you do it this way, as in he was the only person that would give the advice, everyone had to listen to him and do what he said. Now the staff members, they were getting very annoyed with this, and they felt like they weren't allowed to give their contribution, they felt like they were just sort of puppets doing everything that he said, and they didn't feel valued. So a lot of these employees were very reactive to the situation, and they started criticizing him behind his back for his weakness. They would gather around during the breaks and they'd be like, oh, I can't believe what this guy's just done, like, I had these plans to present to him and he's just come in, he's ignored all of them and told me to do something else. Like, oh, I just wish he'd retire. And then another employee was like, oh, but he's only this age, he's not going to retire for many years. How are we going to put up with him? And that sort of thing. Which before the video, I bet you guys would have thought that was a pretty appropriate response. You would have thought, oh, this guy, he can't dictate everyone like that. He needs to take their opinions into account. But there was one very proactive person who decided to respond to the situation not based on emotions and feelings, but on the values and the very core of his character. And so rather than try and criticize the president's weaknesses, he would decide to compensate for them. And so when the president came to him one day and he was telling everyone, oh, do this, do that, do this, he anticipated the president's needs. And so when he came in, he was like, okay, here's the information that you want, but I've also added some things that I thought you'd take a look into. I've given my analysis and my recommendations based on these things. This president was dumbfounded. He was like, wow, not only have you given me the information I wanted, but you also explored a problem and gave me a solution that was exactly what I needed. You took into account my deepest concerns, and you've even given me recommendations on how to fix them, and based on your information, it looks completely accurate and correct. And so that president was like, wow, I don't have to worry about that department anymore. And so the next day, president walks in, he's like, do this, do this, do that, do this. But then he comes to that one proactive man and he goes, what's your opinion on this? Help me out. What do you think? So that proactive man had just increased his circle of influence. And of course, the other staff, they were still reactive at that point. They would then start to turn on the proactive man. And what these reactive people are doing, they're essentially trying to remove themselves of responsibility. They were saying that I cannot do anything about this person's weakness, therefore I have no responsibility to take action. They were blaming someone else, and therefore they were shrinking their circle of influence. But of course, this proactive man, he just kept doing what he was doing, and eventually he was influencing everyone else until it became a very, very tight-knit network. Right up to the point where none of the staff members, not even the president, could make a significant decision without consulting this proactive man first. And the key difference was the president didn't feel threatened in any way, because all the man did was counteract his weakness, and therefore you had two strengths making a much better team. And so the lesson that can be learned from this about being proactive is just whenever a situation faces you and you think it could be potentially bad, just take a minute, think, okay, how am I going to respond to this? How can I turn this into a positive situation? And more importantly, what's within my own control that I can work on to improve the situation and increase my circle of influence? And so that is my tip on how to turn a bad day into a positive day. Hopefully it helps you guys out, and I explained it in a way which you guys can understand. But if you don't understand something, or you want to tell me your specific situation and how I can help, put it in the comments below and I'll do my best. So yeah, that is it for today's video, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, give it a like I said, comment if you've got anything that you want to say and you want to talk to me. Subscribe and join the union if you are new. I hope you're having a good morning, evening or afternoon wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. So yeah, bye! Fuck me, that took ages.